You could talk about slipping endlessly. So much in boxing is connected to slipping that I think it's probably one of the most striking and beautiful elements. It pairs very well with both striking technique and footwork. There are a lot of variations of the slip. There are 3 options in the training versions. That is, these aren't combat versions, but they prepare you for fighting. In other words, these options are needed for the learning process to explain which part is working, at which phase. A lot of strategies are actually built around this very element. When a boxer comes out of a slip, they get countered. So in reality, it's actually very simple to do, just like how you throw a punch quickly. That is, you need to understand that offense. And defense are the same. So if you're being hit quickly, you defend yourself quickly. And that's why the very first slip is introduced as, well, what they also call the pendulum. It's very short, done with short muscles, and it's performed without shifting your body weight, without adjusting your feet, and so on and so forth. That is, if you're being punched in a certain direction, you simply move your body out of the way. You can move your body to the side, or you can use the correct dynamics to lean your body back without shifting. In other words, you can't just topple over backward. Basically, you're only using certain muscles. There is also a slip forward, but very often people make the mistake of moving just their head forward. Here, it's not that the head goes forward, but rather the body is positioned forward. So if you look from the side, the body just twists. This movement, this very movement, is also connected to the punch, because as this part drops, you always lean forward together with the punch. In other words, you can't just duck like this. If you're leaning forward, it should always be combined with the punch. Well, to make it clearer, what can this lead to? In other words, every slip you make should open up an opportunity for you to throw a punch. The first training model, along with the preparatory exercise, is this one. That is, you can sort of swing your arms, and the movement goes all the way down to your knee. In a real fight, you shouldn't go down to your knee. So your movement should be very short. If the punch is a quick movement, then your reaction will also be faster. But there are fewer muscles in the arm, while there are more muscles in the body. That's why this movement and this movement are complex in terms of technique. To do it correctly, the slipping movement and the punching movement should happen, well, almost automatically. In other words, you practice your punch and you should practice your slip in the same way. Now moving on to the shoulders. The shoulders. From the preparatory exercise, your position here should be straight. It might happen in a fight that you'll be feinting in front of your opponent. This is more likely to happen. At long range, because at medium and close range, you won't really be able to feint like that. So this is very effective to do from a distance when you have your opponent fully under control, at least visually. Now about the shoulders. Look, one of my hands goes back while the other stays here. The most important thing here is not to lose balance in your hip, because any movement of the shoulder, this is a preparatory exercise, shows that if your shoulder moves forward, that's the moment of striking, whether from one side or the other. That is, when slipping, you can actually just slip and work only from that position without shifting your hips. That's one option. The next option is the Soviet one. In Soviet boxing classics now, boxing enthusiasts, especially from the old era, will definitely remember this. In Soviet boxing classics, a slip means shifting your body weight. And it's not just about shifting your body weight. You can even do it without bending, meaning without this movement. Just simply, you move to the side. In the Soviet version, the shoulder absolutely had to move forward. And there are a lot of questions about this shoulder movement. Obviously, this movement is much faster than this one. Why was the shoulder brought forward? The shoulder was originally brought forward so that the defensive move, the slip and the punch, would not be separated. In other words, when you bring your shoulder forward, you're already, in a way, automatically loading up for a punch as you do it. On the other hand, moving the shoulder forward also protects you. And here, look, this is very important. The position of the head. We've finally gotten to this point because a lot of guys do it like this. As a result, the angle of vision gets distorted. So it becomes very difficult, especially if you're not used to it, to aim properly. That's why when you're slipping like this, your head should always be facing your opponent. And ideally, it should be aligned with your line of sight so you can aim. No matter how you slip, your head should always be looking at your opponent. And you mustn't turn away while slipping either. Let me repeat, your field of vision, or rather your line of sight, should not be restricted. Now these shifts, these very good shifts, generate a lot of power for your next move. That is, when you transfer your body weight, your whole body is involved in this movement. Isn't this a strike? Isn't this a strike as well? There is no difference between a slip as a defensive action and a strike. A strike is built on the basis of a slip. In other words, it's a defensive action that you simply can't throw a strike without. Yes, you can throw a punch like this. That's why from the very beginning in boxing, boxers are taught and trained, this is in the very first exercises, to throw punches through the pendulum, movement first. For example, on one side, here is the muscular part of the slip. An integral part of the punch is power. So for example, if I extend, if I do this, yes, I can start my attack from this movement, well, from this kind of action. With this movement, I can distract. With the same movement, I can, how should I put it, provoke, feint. In other words, make a move that looks 100% like a punch. That's where they merge together. The third type is even more complicated because it involves movement on your feet. Very often in a fight, you get cornered by very fast punches. And these punches don't stop. 1, 2, 3, 4. In other words, you can't just stand in front of your opponent. You always have to, look for an angle where you have the distance to control and see your opponent so that you can, land a punch on him. That's why the slip is done together with a step and with a shift of body weight. So, for example, if you're being threatened from that side, you slip in that direction and already start bringing yourself under your leg, just to make it clear. You kind of lower yourself under your leg, and from here you can already start moving. You must not straighten up. You shift onto your leg, and then you straighten up using your legs. I don't know. They used to teach this everywhere. Now, I don't know why they don't explain it. As soon as someone starts to straighten up, they get hit with a series of strikes. Some types, it's just absolute nonsense. But, boys start organizing themselves to such an extent. They go out there and think that this is how they're protecting themselves. They get exposed right away, like with their hand. Well, how should I put it? Here, let me show you. He just dodged it. And exactly like when you hit a speed bag. Well, he goes down just like that. So if you step forward, lean onto your leg, it's better to straighten up with a step. With a step, you can also slip forward. To the center, straight on, or retreat backward. There's even a type of slip that's done, a bit not mathematically. In other words, it's done illogically. If here we take a step, and with the step, our body leans very easily. That is, correctly, right? You can squat down onto your leg, in this direction, in that direction, in this direction, or in that direction. You can slip under either this arm or that arm. The most important thing is to get out of the line of fire. Well, when the movement is going straight, any movement you make can be onto your leg, any at all. That is, you can move onto your leg so you don't get stuck in one place. I'll say it again. This is important. The slip is set up and executed in the same rhythm as the punch. You throw the punch quickly, the slip should be done quickly as well. For example, at medium range, this definitely won't work. only if you don't let your opponent hit you. If you, okay, or don't let them take aim, or body at you. In other words, he can't take aim because you're constantly moving, constantly jerking your head. So it's very difficult. But in reality, for a good boxer, this isn't a problem. He'll just wait and land a short, medium-range punch. This is the skill you develop on the equipment. All the slips, all the defenses, all of that, it's the same training cycle, both for offense and for defense. In other words, it should always be present. It should be included in every training session. There's a very illogical kind of slip. It's clear about this leg, right? It's comfortable to lean on it, and it's also convenient to lean when throwing a punch. Plus, you can even generate power for a punch from straightening up. So if you do it from a stationary position, but move to the side, or for example, buhat pa society do, step in here to throw a punch, that's clear. But there's one kind of slip where, for example, your left leg is forward and you slip to the right side. There are also a lot of questions about this. This is for quick movement. Mike Tyson also really liked this and used it often. He would move his foot slightly to the side while slipping. It looked like this. So the foot would move over here only to allow him to quickly shift his body and continue throwing punches from a slightly, how should I put it, from a different version of the pendulum slip. In other words, he was, roughly speaking, combining one type with another. That's what a slip is. You absolutely have to practice it. And once again, you need to learn it together with punching technique. When my coach taught me, according to the Soviet classic style, he always told me that any defensive movement should open up an opportunity for you to strike. If your defensive movement doesn't give you that opportunity, you're vulnerable. After one punch, there will be a second, third, fourth, and fifth. And they'll be coming at such speed that at first, well, you have to bring your defense to an instinctive level, just like with punching. In other words, you don't think about it. You already know how to do it. It's the same with defense. That is nimpito in a fight. I definitely don't think about which defense I'm going to use. A pendulum move or a slip with a shift onto my leg. I'll do whatever it takes to land my punch quickly. And if for that I need to use, let's say, one type of slip or another, well, that only happens in the heat of the fight. Slipping is trained through gymnastic exercises. A whole variety of gymnastic exercises. I only showed one preparatory exercise there, but there are many. So these exercises, even including some circular or semicircular movements, which actually relate to other defensive actions to be, like ducking, for example. Ducking, it has the same characteristics, but we'll talk about those and their specifics separately. The most important thing, once again, about slipping, guys, don't get stuck on just one movement. In boxing, it's not just this or just that. In boxing, it's going to be this, and this, and this. You have to go through the whole, quite literally, this entire path, along which you'll encounter this type of slip and that type of slip, and leaning back and slipping forward with a punch. Well, as for using the slip, I'll tell you this. At first, you see the punch, and then you use the slip. That is, slips usually work best. They're at long range because there you have time and can calculate. So when should you do it? In short, at medium range, it's much harder to slip because the speed of the punch is just faster, but that doesn't mean that the slip won't protect you at medium range. It will protect you, and it will protect you at close range too. Once again, I'm telling you, for a fighter in a fight, all of this becomes intuitive. In other words, he already feels it with the slip, right? Some guys, from the very beginning, already tilt their bodies into a slip to deflect a punch and to, well, when you stand straight, the distance is one thing, but as soon as you start leaning a bit to the side, the distance changes. That is the angle of the punch. toward you changes. And with your slip, you can also adjust forward and backward. So as I said, slipping is a very flexible, you could talk about slipping endlessly. Slipping backward. That is, you can also, for example, when you get scared, which happens all the time with beginners, you pull your body back, adjust your feet, and that's it, you're protected. But if you pull your body back and then move forward, well, you're definitely going to get caught by a 1-2. There are downsides to slipping. You really need to be well aware of these downsides. For example, in a fight, I start to corner my opponent. I see that the person is slipping. He won't be able to get out of that slip anymore. That's why when you practice slipping, whether in front of a mirror on the heavy bag, utude, or with pads, you need to understand its application. In other words, you already start to realize where the danger lies. You might not have time to get out of the slip. You could get cornered and you may never straighten back up. So you end up staying in that position, so to speak. Now, these preparatory exercises, again, are what help develop all types of slips, leans, and so on. Guys, this is simply how it is. This is what every training session starts with. In a boxer's warm-up routine, in its very first form, these exercises are laid out like the Lord's Prayer. You have to stretch yourself out in every direction. Understand this, if you build the muscular framework for your defense, you will also build the muscular framework for your punch. Defense and punching. They are essentially the same quality. In the Soviet school, they used to say that a boxer defends against punches from a defensive stance. He needs to create for himself such a defensive position where it's very easy and comfortable for him to throw a punch and he'll be able to strike without a second thought, 100%. That's why this form of body defense is considered a mark of mastery. Of course, it's clear that if a beginner steps in and says, go ahead, try to catch me, he'll be red immediately. You won't even be able to slip a punch. So, well, that's why beginners up to the first rank just hop around like little posts. You can't make him lean left or right because, well, he simply doesn't have that kind of muscle form yet. It just hasn't developed. All the preparatory exercises, all of these, well, I don't know why they aren't done. They go up to the bag, start hitting it, and don't realize that, well, it's the same thing. That is, without this, well, just like without a punch, you won't get into the ring. And that's just one defensive body movement. Just one slipping. Based on the slip, by the way, there is one type of ducking. That's also very interesting. I'll get a bit ahead of myself and just briefly explain how it works. Sometimes you get forced into a slip. You come out of the slip or with a ducking move. So the first part of this ducking move is, and it consists of, you bend your body and you can straighten it out like this, right? You bend your body, but it's better not to go through the front because you might get hit by a swinging arm and end up sticking to the arm. All these preparatory movements, all these little twists, all of that really helps a lot. And this is during the warm-up. The second option, which is absolutely necessary, is to practice both the slip and the punch in a single motion. So for example, if you're just hitting the bag, here's your punch, right? Then try to start it like this, right? Throw yourself into a slip, just like in a fight, and then fire off the punch. You can do it simultaneously, dodging and throwing the punch at the same time, if that's what's needed. You can add a twist as well. All of this needs to be programmed in. It shouldn't be limited to just one explanation. This is truly a very serious training process that ingrains itself into your muscles and your subconscious. And it can even change your internal chemistry. That is, as soon as you get that notorious taste of victory, you start weaving and dodging in such a way that it really becomes effective. But the effectiveness of dodging is truly felt only in experienced hands. In inexperienced hands, though, it will wear you out because these movements, let me explain again, if you do them in the ring, these movements are very demanding. Try it. How many of these movements can you do in one training session? Why do you need to do so many of them during training? Because you do this particular movement but you tend to ignore these other movements. So do both types of movements at the same time. You can do it this way, that way, or another way. Moreover, the speed of your hand and the speed of your body should be the same in this case, so that as you defend yourself, you're already kind of striking back. With shifting, without shifting, with your legs, without your legs, you need to study all of that together. And this comes from training to training. This is a process. Well, for real champions,